Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mission Mediation podcast. My name is Jonathan. I'm, of course, the founder of the Pact and the mediator of the Pact, and also now the host and producer of the Mission Mediation podcast. If this is the first time you're joining us on the Mission Mediation podcast, this is season two. And you'll ask yourself, where did season one go? Well, don't worry, it's all on YouTube. All you got to do is search for the channel, the YouTube channel. It's called Mission Mediation by Pact, and you get to see the entire channel there, the entire archive of episodes that we did last year. Some really good conversations happened last year. All those conversations are also archived on the Pact website. Go to thepact.in, and once again, you should find them under the resources. As I said, this is season two, and this is a very special episode. We got a really good speaker joining us today. She's a dear friend who I have been in touch with for most of my mediation career. Tanu, of course, thank you so much for joining us from Mumbai today.
Thank you,
Are you-
Jonathan. It's such
are
a
you in
pleasure
Mumbai?
finally to be on your podcast.
Thank you.
And I know we've been talking about it for long, but I'm just so glad that finally this has come through.
Finally
So thank
happened.
you again.
It's
Yes.
finally happened. No, it's our pleasure to have you. Are you actually joining from Mumbai though? Are you on your weekend home
No,
in
I'm in
Lonavala?
Lonavala. I'm
There
in
you go.
Lonavala. It's a Saturday.
Saturday. That's the place to be on a Saturday. But yeah, Lonavala being represented here now on the Mission Mediation podcast. It's not exactly Mumbai, but so excited to have you, Tanu. You know, as you said, we've been thinking about this for quite some time, and we are going to be touching upon a very delicate conversation today, delicate topic, something that people love talking about, but very few understand the nuances of what it really means in practice. So I'm really keen to get down to those details. For those of you, once again, who are joining us live on LinkedIn and YouTube, please use the comment section, say hello, tell us where you're joining us from. And during the course of this conversation, if you have any questions for Tanu or myself, or if you want to add to whatever we're already saying, please use that comment section, and we'll be happy to kind of address that if we can on this conversation. I know a lot of people watch this over the weekend, they watch it in record. And so if you're watching us on record, once again, you can get in touch with us. We'll be more than happy to address some of the questions you have. Um, Now, most of you who are watching this episode might already know Tanu, but if you don't, I think it's important that I introduce you to her. Of course, Tanu Mehta is an independent counsel, a mediator, and an arbitrator in the Bombay High Court. She is the chair of the Committee for Mediation and Conciliation at the Bombay Chamber of Commerce, and of course, held the role of a director at the Center for Mediation and Research at MNLU Mumbai. And that was a great time of working together, Tanu, many years ago. Tanu and me also have something else in common. Our master's degree has the same name. It's Mediation and Conflict Resolution. Of course, I had the privilege of doing it at Strathclyde in Glasgow. And Tanu did her master's in Mediation and Conflict Resolution at the Tel Aviv University. So once again, a very interesting insight there. And I know you've got a lot to talk about mediation, especially from the community mediation space. So feel free to go down that path, Tanu, as we talk about neutrality. So here, I'm going to start with the curveball straight away, I think, since we're talking about neutrality. And because the topic is a rhetoric question. Can mediators truly be, or can mediators be truly neutral, right? I would say that they have to be neutral. It's not a question of an option. It's not a choice. It's not an option, right? They have to be neutral. And so I've tried to kind of dissect this, word neutrality. And I've always felt like neutrality is what you put into action. It's your actions, it's your words, it's your attitude, it's your approach, it's your body language in a room as the mediator. And that's neutrality, I think. What you say, what you do, how you behave. Because all of us have biases, all of us have preferences, all of us have baggage that we bring into the mediation room, and we can never take that away from us. All of us have backgrounds. But what we do in the room, what we say in the room, is what defines our neutrality. Now, that's my take on it. Don't know, what do you think?
So, in true legal fashion, I will right away disagree with you there,
Okay.
and I think it'll help
Good
us.
start.
Formulate this very, very interesting topic in a more broader sense. So, while yes, we are taught that, you have to appear neutral, and for that neutrality, you have to act in a particular way, you have to talk in a particular way. I would like to go further and say, let's assume I learn the right way of acting neutral, but I am not neutral. Okay, is that not not a way of really putting wool in somebody's eyes? Because like they say, appearances can be deceptive, and
Right.
all of us have appearances. So I do not believe that mediators should build a persona or an appearance of neutrality. Neutrality is something that will either come out because you are that kind of person, okay, and it will not be despite you having just the right techniques of showing your neutrality. So let's say, all of us write, not only in our mediation agreements, but even otherwise, all of us, even our biggest constitution office holders always sign an oath that, oh, I'm going to be neutral, I'm going to be unbiased, I'm going to have faith in our constitution, or somebody, or I'm going to go by the constitution, I'm going to go by the ethics, blah 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 blah. Everybody of us can sign huge reams of agreements saying, I am going to be this, but all of us know where all our failures lie, right? I mean, uh, and it's the same with mediators. So I do not believe neutrality is words and action as shown. I believe neutrality is a state of being. Okay. And that state of being can only come in via regular self practice. Okay. And your self practice is something that you deeply have to, you know, practice on a day to day basis, on a case to case basis, on a daily level. It's, how you say, it's like fitness is not that one day, you suddenly have chopped off the fat of your body, have, built yourself packs and whatever. Fitness is a consistent practice over the years, which eventually leads you to not only a fit body but a fit mind. Same is the case with neutrality. You have to keep practicing uh, the art of becoming neutral in the long run, and that neutrality will have to be for everything. Then it'll affect you, it'll affect your being, and you will become neutral for everything, which is, I mean, a great state of being.
There you go. We're already off to a great start, Tanu. Look at that. We already have a different opinion on this. I like this. I love this. If you're joining us live on LinkedIn or YouTube, we've already heard Tanu have her take on what neutrality means. Tell us, what does neutrality mean to you? What do you expect from a mediator when you expect neutrality? So let's get those comments and thoughts in place. But some very interesting insight there. So you're saying it's not an act, right? It's not an act. It has to be genuine, which means that it has to be a state of being, as you say. So it has to be something that it has to be you, and that's what you bring to the table, right? uh, but I guess there's also that I would say admission for most mediators that and I might be digressing a bit, but try and bring me back here, because when we talk about neutrality, we always talk about it from a perspective of also appointing the mediator. Is the mediator
Yes.
neutral? You get a chance to appoint a mediator, and you say this mediator I
Yeah.
think is neutral. I don't have any conflict of interest with this person. I have never met this person. I mean, I'm familiar with their work. I know who they are, what they do, but I have no interactions. I've not studied with them. I've not played with them. I've not, worked with them in the past. So from that perspective, neutrality. I know the person's going to be fair. So then, does neutrality go with fairness? Is that something that you equate there? Do you need
Of
to be
course,
fair? So when you're
we
saying
can be.
neutral, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, so
Okay.
because when you say neutrality is got to do with fairness, then fairness is an act, right? To be fair in the room, to be fair in the conversations and the actions. That is
See,
an act.
no, to be fair is Uh, See, there is no question. We have to be fair, okay?
Yeah.
But being fair again comes from a certain one. It comes from a certain neutrality, and two, fairness is also a perspective about what is fair in a particular circumstance, right?
Hmm.
Right. I mean, fairness is a certain circumstantial perspective.
Hmm.
Fairness is not a 360-degree perspective.
Right.
All of us recognize, for example, that
It's
when
subjective.
something comes, it's subjective.
Yeah.
Very, very correct word here. So, all of us, for example, when faced with a situation, I mean, two people fighting, even when two children fight, as if we are a parent and two children fight between us,
Mm.
our immediate goal, of course, is to be fair. Are you take this, you take this. And then, we learn, oh, there's a backstory that this has come from this has come from this, and then our concept expands, and then eventually, even, I mean, in mediation we are taught right away that a conflict is not just about being fair. There are so many perspectives, and eventually we want to go to their interest and then be fair, right? So that each one can feel fair. More
Yeah.
important, their fairness, their concept, that yes, have I got what I needed, right? And am I happy with it? Because eventually what is fair to the world may not be what you want.
Yeah.
So fairness again is a very subjective word. But I will say that neutrality uh, comes from respecting. I mean, neutrality will automatically be there when you start respecting each one's view and each one's perspective, and agree to kind of go by that perspective. And I'd like to I mean, maybe I'll say, I'll relate a story here, because I
Yeah.
think sometimes every philosophical discussion or every intellectual discussion requires a real life example.
Yes.
So actually, I come from a very activist lawyer background. When I practiced law and I was into litigation, I came from a very activist background. So there's no question of being fairness. I had a clear idea, this is wrong, this is right, and this is where things have to be. And a lot of us are like this when we are younger, that this is wrong, what is happening is wrong, the government is wrong,
Mm.
the system is wrong, the patriarchy is wrong, this is wrong, that is wrong. Anyways, hundreds of things. Human rights, environmental law, all that was my, area of concern.
Yeah.
So as an activist, I also, of course, brought that activism to my home. And I used to have a housekeeper who came from a small village in Bihar. Okay. And uh, I mean, while we had given him his job, he was getting married. He was about 2021, and he was getting married. Of course, first I tried my best to tell him that no, he shouldn't get married so soon, blah, blah, blah. But then, he was like, no, no, in our village, we do that. And he wanted to get his wife, who was all of 19 or something, okay,
Mm.
to where I stay. So I was like, he's just going to be his typical systemic guy. He comes from wherever, and he has this idea that a woman. So I kind of put it in his head, or rather like an activist, that you should allow your wife to come and study a bit and work a bit, because in my head it was very important that a
Mm.
woman finds her freedom, first freedom, via her financial independence, right? If
Mm.
she earns and she's not dependent on her husband, that's her first step to self uh, development, self respect. So I was very keen that this young girl of 19, 20, who was going to come and stay in the same place, I would I would ensure that she gets a job. So she starts understanding what it is to be independent and start having
Mm.
her money. And then I also wanted that he respect his wife accordingly, because his respect for his wife should not be that, the wife is ultimately going to be at home. I'm going to dictate how many children there will be. I'm going to dictate how she's going to live, blah, blah, blah. So I already had that thing in my mind. And I'm talking you, this is all typical how we come from our biases, from what we think is fair, from what we think is the right thing to do, because we've seen in our lives that unless women are made independent,
Yeah.
unless women start earning, etc. Now here comes a situation. So both are from a very very small town, not local town kya village, and not
Mm.
seeing the world, etc. Now this girl comes and she has a ready-made job, because I have already talked to some of my friends and I have ensured that she gets a job in the kitchen, because I thought that's, that's possibly what she already knew. So at least she can start in a kitchen in a hospitality sector and then move according to what she wanted.
Mm.
So she got an 8-hour job and a fantastic wage. And as soon as she entered, and I had ensured that this couple who was starting their life should not live, like so he was getting a salary from me, and I ensured that she was going to get a good salary from an institution. And I got them a little small place, on tenancy. Again, all my contacts, all my
Mm.
activism, so that they could start their new life as a couple who were equal. Okay. I thought, great, I did everything that I wanted. And lo and behold, after 1.5 or 2 years, so right from first 3 months, 6 months, the girl would often come and say, oh, I don't enjoy this and all. And I used to say, no,
Mm.
you have to adjust. And then I would actually go to that institution and check out, what is something wrong? Is somebody being blah, blah, blah? Is somebody being, unfair to her, etc. And I realized, no, it was a very big institution, so many workers of so many states, etc. So everything was going well, but she would not like it. And then one fine day she just left her job in a huff and came back home and said, I'm not going to work and I'm not going to do this. And then when I talked with her, I realized that her whole mentality was, why the hell should I be working? My husband should work and provide for me. Why am I here and why should I be working? And I realized that everything that I thought is the right thing to make a woman, independent and have her self worth and all,
Mm.
she came from a completely different background, and she didn't think she should be put to work. She thought that it was wrong that her husband had agreed that she should work out, and that her husband was being influenced by me, that, oh, all right, this person, you should give her freedom to work, etc. And that was the day I realized that all this concept of what is right, what is wrong, what is fairness, what is, the correct way of pushing somebody to live and live with independence, all wrong. Let them learn their lessons in their life. Let her come to a position where she thinks, no, my independence is more important than, my being corseted by my husband or something. But that growth has to be hers. And that was a very good lesson for me,
Mm.
not only vis-a-vis mediation, but vis-a-vis my whole life approach, that everything is sidelined. You have to allow people to decide, what they want in life and how they want to build it. And then you have to be neutral enough, and not have that bias that, no, whatever she's saying is stupid and she's going to fall flat on her face, which was
Yeah.
my first idea, that she's going to regret this 5 years down the line that she left such a good job. That was my first idea. My bias has to be kept aside. I just have to listen
Mhm.
and do the best that I can in those circumstances.
No, this is great. Thank you for sharing this example, Tanu, because I think, though it's not a typical mediation, but what you're bringing out is that inherent bias, not exactly bias, but more like blind spots, you see, where we think we know what's good for someone else. And this is a great example to bring up, because I think we, as mediators and the mediation community, we are not comfortable sharing our own limitations and weaknesses and learnings. As you said, that was a huge learning, right? I think this is a great example for us to move into this next segment where we want to talk about that, that blind spot that is always there, that bias that's always there with the mediator. And I like that you spoke about the right versus the wrong. See, we all know that 90% or maybe more than 90% of mediators in India are lawyers. Yeah, some of them are practicing lawyers. They actually do a 9 to 4 in court or a 9 to 5 in court, and then from 5 to 7:30 they're mediating wherever it is, a 5 to 10 that they're mediating, which means, as you say, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., all you're thinking is right versus wrong. It's simple. I mean, no, you can't go to court without any other thought process, right? So, you, and then you're sitting there with two parties who are both trying to get your attention, who are both trying to impress upon you, who are both trying to pull you towards their sides, each side, right? And I've had situations where they'll say something and they'll be like, "Am I right? Or don't you think I'm right? Or isn't that wrong?" Right? And of course, these are easy things to handle. I mean, all of us have practiced reframing and neutrality, how to kind of reflect back. That's okay. That's because it's obvious. We can see the trap very obvious in front of our eyes or our ears, and we handle it. We make sure we don't say you're right or you're wrong. Though there are some mediators who will go even we both know there are some mediators who will even go the distance and say yes, yes, you're right. But most of us handle it and we don't go down that path and we say no, we're not getting into that. But there are preconceived notions, right, Tanu? And I think this is a great example that you brought up, because a lot of mediators have their own triggers, they have their own traumas, they have their own advocacy that they fight for, they have their own interest, right? They see these situations, they have mediated maybe certain situations of these kinds in the past. So there was recently someone who I was speaking to who said that I refuse to I've been doing like commercial disputes in the in the space of, say, partnership disputes, in a small level partnership disputes, for quite some time, for the last, say, 7 8 years of their life. But just recently they had a very bad period for around 3 4 months where they were where this person had a fallout with a very close partner of theirs. Okay, so they used to work together as co-mediators for quite some time, and they had a massive fallout. And so when a case came to this person regarding a partnership dispute, uh, this person said that now I've revealed the gender. This person said that he recused himself. He said he can't do this case simply because he's still fresh from the trauma of having had to break up with this collaborator of his that he has known for the last almost decade. And he's still fresh. He's in that moment. He's in that mood. He's thinking about how could we have broken off as co-mediators, as partners who have always been mediating. And because of that mood or that mindset or that trauma that he's holding, he refused to do this partnership dispute because he said that I can see where this is going. I can relate to it, and it's too fresh and too raw for me.
Hmm.
So maybe I'll start mediating this kind of cases 1 year down the line,
Hmm.
1.5 year down the line. But right now, I'm not ready for it. And for me, that was an example of the mediator saying, I might not be able to be neutral in that
Hmm.
moment, and being honest and admitting. Obviously, the mediator never didn't mention to the parties why he was saying no and why he didn't want to take up the case, but he was explaining this to me in terms of neutrality and saying we have to be honest about it, because what's going to happen is once the mediation starts, when you hear them speak and go against each other, it's going to start triggering your own kind
That's
of trauma.
true. That's true.
So I think that is a fantastic example of, once again, that inherent bias coming through. I want to bring up something else with you. I think especially in the space of commercial disputes, and you have done let's talk about commercial. We'll come back to community in a while, but especially in commercial disputes, which you've done many of those. There's always power dynamics as well in the room. There's always a stronger looking party, not just on paper, but also in the room, right? Maybe if someone who talks quite fast, talks quite loud, they come with an army of, counsel. So, what does neutrality mean in that moment, and how can you start to showcase your neutrality even before the mediation starts? What kind of processes can you put in place to make sure that you are giving both sides a neutral space as a mediator? And do you have examples of this that you might have faced, especially in power dynamics?
So, in commercial disputes, see, there will be parties who are far more efficient, let me use that word, efficient, in promoting their case. Okay. And let me be very frank, uh, as a society, we love efficiency, right? A person who comes to me with a set, you know, a set of Excel sheets and data and, you know, uh, everything organized, you immediately get impressed. Wow, this person's done his homework. Versus a person who's sloppy.
Yes.
Naturally. So, as a society, we are automatically biased towards efficiency, right? As a mediator, if somebody is not efficient, how are you going to treat that person? Okay. And that is the first thing, because our first, as a judge, it would be clear the person who presents his case the best way wins. The judge doesn't have to consider too many things there, right? Eventually, it's the lawyer's skill. If that lawyer is unable to present his case well, he's gone. His case is gone. So, for a judge, it's a very clear idea. But for a mediator, I feel that because we are in our position and because of the way we've been taught, we'll also have to be unbiased about sloppiness and efficiency, because every person who's in a dispute may is in a dispute because he is different or he or she is different from the other person. So sloppy person is different from an efficient person. But does that mean does that mean that the sloppy person has to suffer the consequences of his sloppiness? And two, does that mean that you as a mediator cannot help at least that person see that this is where he is failing and help him kind of ace his game up? So, when I see something like this, for example, I will often sit separately with a person who's not got his, act together and is
Right.
not able to present himself well, and help him recognize how his behavior or his so-called presentation is affecting his own case, is affecting his own negotiation, is
Right.
affecting his own ability to negotiate this contract. And once I have kind of explained, or it's not even an explanation, that most of it is about
Yeah.
question answer, so that the other person recognizes that okay, this is where he or she is lacking. I encourage them that if they have not learned these techniques, go to a professional and get it all, together. It'll help you also clarify what is it you want, what is it you don't want, and then come back to the table. So when somebody says, when you ask a question like this, that how do you keep your neutrality? My neutrality in the first place is my ability to recognize that just because somebody is efficient does not mean that they deserve the best of everything. And just because somebody is sloppy doesn't mean that they deserve our disattention or our non-attention. Help both the persons come together,
Yeah.
where they feel okay, they are equally good, and then let the negotiation happen. So I think
Yeah.
I hope to move towards empowerment, and that empowerment cannot be my own. That person has to find ways to empower his own game. Like I have to find a coach if I want to play good badminton and I'm not good at it. I first Somebody should be able to tell me that, right, that I am not, I'm not playing my best game, that I'm capable of playing a better game, that there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with me, and then telling me to find a coach, and then then I will go and find a coach, right, and then become competitive. So I think as a mediator, I can just do that. I can help that empowerment. But first, that empowerment will come only when I'm neutral, because I have to recognize that no, both these people have to be, treated fairly. Again, that's a word I'm using, uh, and
Yeah.
ensure that they kind of negotiate on a level playing field.
No, this is so interesting. Once again, you're bringing up some very, very, as I said, nuanced topics, and I was expecting nothing less than this, Tanu. So, thank you so much once again. For those of you who are joining us live or watching this on record, we are speaking to Tanu Mehta, of course, an independent counsel and mediator at the Bombay High Court. And this is, of course, the Mission Mediation podcast. Tell us what you think about what Tanu and I have been discussing for the last half an hour now. You might have questions, drop them to us in the LinkedIn comments, or you can always write in to us as well. I'll drop in some information at the bottom of your screen. But yeah, I think once again, you brought up the topic about, I think I can call it coaching. And some people don't like using that word. I'm comfortable with that. And in many international jurisdictions, people are very comfortable using the word coaching in parallel to mediation, in parallel to facilitation. At the end of the day, what is facilitation, right? And you're saying that rightly. If you as the mediator cannot help the party prepare better, so that at the end of the day you want to create a level playing field, and I think it starts very early. You'll admit that it starts in the pre-mediation phase. All of us mediators, we like to request parties and counsel for a mediation brief or mediation strategy document, right? Like, just tell us more about what you're thinking, how you're preparing, what are your thresholds, what is your range of settlement, what are your issues, and we try and get some kind of a perspective even before the mediation starts. And right at that stage, you will know who's efficient and who's sloppy. Right? You'll see someone send you a detailed bullet point kind of document, 3-4 pages, and the other person has written you a paragraph. And this can go down very differently once the mediation starts. So I'm completely comfortable with reaching out to this person who's only sent me a paragraph and try and understand more. Right? You want to understand more, and you understand why. It might be that they just want to share just that much, or it might be that they're just not used to kind of writing a document like that, and they're not sure how much to share. And maybe as you say, they're just sloppy. They're just like taking, which is also a way to kind of determine whether they are really participating in good faith or not very early on, right? As a mediator, once again, neutrality, you want to make sure that for the person who's efficient, the person who's really putting their heart into this, you want to make sure the other person's also putting their heart into this. So your neutrality is playing right in the start. You're trying to make this, as you say, a space for them to have those conversations, right? You want to make this a space that they can really truly be efficient in the mediation room, right? I think that's, uh, and for a lot of people, maybe they're uncomfortable discussing this topic of coaching, guiding. I don't see this. I don't see coaching or guiding as, uh, you know, as something that diminishes the mediator's neutrality. If it's done the right way, of course, as you very clearly explained there. But do you sense that this might be, especially in the context that we operate here in India, Tanu, do you see that this might be uh, um, done wrongly or done inefficiently as a mediator, where it might not exactly be guiding and coaching, and it might start moving into spaces which is more of coercing and I would say sometimes even threatening parties to get their act together.
Absolutely. So again, it's a matter of long practice. It's a
Correct.
matter of experience, and it's something that has to be developed over a number of years. Because I mean, in India, you'll get all kinds of parties who will not recognize the difference between empowerment, between guiding, between coaching, and between coercion. They will not understand when that line has been uh, crossed. Then there are parties who will use that word when even the line is not crossed. Just guiding them, they'll say, oh, you're putting pressure on me.
Yeah.
Right? So there are all kinds of parties, and it's not just India. I think it's across the world, but India more so, because we have we have a very heavily diverse population. So there will be all kinds of parties. So it's
Can I just
only.
come in there, Tanu? Sorry,
Hmm.
I might be breaking your chain of thought, but you brought up a very important point, because this is a debate again, and as you say, you might not be intentionally trying to push them towards efficiency or push them to, and you're not trying to like be biased against them, but they might look at it like that, right? And so I think, as we had declared right in the start, neutrality at the end of the day, it's quite subjective, and in my head, it's coming down to how much of trust have you earned from the parties, what kind of rapport you have built. And once again, we're saying that if you really want to earn that trust and that neutrality to showcase, building rapport is so crucial, because if you have built rapport, then when you ask those hard hitting questions, they will know it's coming from a neutral space, correct? What do you think? And have you had those experiences?
Uh, yes, rapport building is important, and I think rapport needs to be built right in the front, right ahead. But rapport building can unravel, according to my experience. Okay,
Okay.
my experience is rapport building can unravel when other things crowd a space. Okay, because there can be some situations where, despite all your rapport, there are some things that trigger a person's ego very hard. There are some things that trigger something else very hard, maybe, certain commercial calculations. And there's a third factor that none of us should discount. There's always some other influence. It could be a legal influence,
For
it could
sure.
be somebody. So
Yeah.
that person, even when I as a party were to go home and relate, home or my office or wherever I'm going, and relate something, and I'm told by the other person, no, 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 you know why this, your mediator must have said this, because the mediator must be trying to make you do this. So
Yeah.
suddenly that person with whom I've built a rapport might completely misjudge or misinterpret my actions, because somebody else has put that thought in his mind.
Hmm. Hmm.
And all of us know we are human. I mean, when there is another thought in our mind, the best of relationships can unravel. I
Yeah.
mean, it happens in our own homes. Our own parents sometimes misjudge us because somebody else, our own
Yeah.
sibling has said something about it. I mean, this happens in the best of relationships. So what is the mediator's rapport relationship with the client? It's just of so many hours or so many days, right?
Yeah.
So there can be any amount of situations which can unravel that rapport. Eventually, how will you get through? You have to be able to make people think about their positions. Okay. And in that sense, whatever it is, a person should go out feeling that, well, I rethought this and I am going to revisit what I've been thinking. Because it's not about unraveling a relationship, it's about unraveling the knot that you have put yourself into. Two
Right.
parties, when they are in a dispute, they have knotted their relationship. The important thing is there somebody who's making you rethink? If that somebody, you have become uncomfortable with that somebody, which is the mediator, that's all right. There can always be another mediator, there can always be another date when the dispute will settle. But what is important is you have to have the ability to get the person to rethink his approach, his attitude, I mean, when I say his, her, uh, approach, attitude, you know, co- idea of what this conflict is about.
Yeah, once again, interesting thoughts there in terms of you having the choice at all points of times, and it's a great message out to every party, every user, every lawyer. I'm part of groups where lawyers come in complaining about their experience in mediation, and say we're not happy with the way the mediator is behaving with my client. And see, when you listen to this secondhand, you don't exactly know what has happened, what is being said. As we had declared earlier, sometimes the mediator might not really be being biased or being forceful, might be really just trying to guide. The lawyer is a bit too touchy about it, or sometimes it is quite
And
toxic.
the lawyers might feel threatened that their client is thinking in a different way than what they want him to think.
Exactly.
That itself
Right.
is a big threat, that the client is now holding at least a doubt about the approach to this matter, or even a doubt is holding a doubt about whether this is the way we should go or there is another way to go.
Have you
That
had situations like this, from your
Oh,
experience?
yeah, very
Uh,
much. I recently went through a case where the client was absolutely clear that he, she stroke, he wouldn't talk to me without the lawyer.
hmm,
The one time that I spoke, I mean, the earliest time that I spoke, the person was very clear, this is what they wanted, blah 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 blah. Okay, after that, whenever I wanted to speak, questioning their clarity, because all right, the first time, of course, the person will come and say, I want this. Then you need more sessions. Okay, you want this, why, where is it leading you, what would you do with it, etc. She he Whatever, I mean, I don't want to say,
hmm.
but there was a clear idea that I wouldn't talk without my lawyer. I spoke to the lawyer, and the lawyer was very clear that whatever it is, talk to the client. But the client would say, no, I won't talk with the lawyer. And the lawyer wouldn't allow a meeting to happen. Whenever I
Sure,
asked
sure.
the lawyer would say, no, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. So it was, in my head, clearly a case where either the lawyer thought that, this is it, we've presented our case, now whatever you want to do, you do with it, you get us this, right? As if it was my duty to get them what they wanted, which they had presented to me in the first session. And I could also clearly see that the lawyer wasn't wanting to go down another thought, because the lawyer had maybe another, I mean, they have hundreds of cases going on. They
Yeah.
don't want to be, they would find it very wishy-washy to keep rethinking, right? They didn't want to go through this. They probably thought, this is what we want. If, and I mean, we are going to the judge with the demand of X. Internally, we can take a demand of anything between, say, P to X.
Hmm.
But that's it. And it was not, according to me, I mean, our questions would have unraveled something, a new alphabet altogether. Nothing near P to X, between P to X.
Right.
Okay, but we needed that time and the lawyer wasn't. So it was a clear cut case where I felt that the lawyer's influence was so strong that there is no way we could have we could have moved any further.
And
So
in
what do you do then?
Yeah, and and this is I guess it's a typical commercial mediation, right? A contractual dispute or a vendor dispute. So I mean, in this kind of situation, as a mediator, I guess you draw the line and you don't want to get involved, right? And this is not your space to come in and I mean, for my practice and I think my school of ethics, it's I can't go to a distance to say, obviously your lawyer is not acting in your best interest. That's out of the picture. You can't do that as a mediator. But of course, you can always place the situation before the party and say, what is your best case scenario? What is Once again, we're going back to the basics here. Help the party reflect
This
on.
was not a commercial matter.
Okay,
Okay, it was not a commercial matter at all. It was another dispute, and it's just freshly off my table. So I don't want to kind of right now say anything, because
sure,
eventually
yeah,
it's going to be fought in courts, and I don't want to say anything. But I definitely see. I can't even tell uh, anybody that, oh, it is, I can't prejudice eh, the court, right? I can't prejudice the client, right? I mean, I
yes.
have to maintain my mediator. So I thought the best way of dealing with this was to tell the lawyer itself that, this is what I think you're doing, and I'm
Hmm.
not comfortable with what you're doing, and I can't be a mediator in this because you are blocking me. So I put it out to the lawyer itself and closed it, because I'm not going to prejudice
Fair enough.
anybody,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah,
I mean, I cannot. But at least I made the lawyer know what I thought,
yeah.
because let him or her know that this is what I think of them.
I think this
Close.
is a no. I think a lot of mediators in India will relate to you with this. There is a lot of pushback from counsel, but of course, there are also good lawyers who understand their role, who understand the party's interest, who understand the value of getting disputes resolved quickly via mediation. And I'm sure you've come across those lawyers as well. who really work in the best interest of the client. We've had a great conversation. It's been 45 minutes talking about neutrality, talking about fairness, talking about power dynamics, and talking about the relationship between lawyers and mediators, and once again within the context of neutrality. I want to bring this to an end with a very I would say a controversial one, if that's okay. We thought we would discuss a few topics today.
Welcome to any controversial law. It
All right.
triggers up all kinds of answers.
Here you go then. So let's talk about process versus outcome neutrality. A lot of mediators say, I'm not neutral about the process because I actively shape it. I'm in charge of it. And if someone's misbehaving or someone's going out of the agenda or someone's being a bully about the process or not participating in good faith, I'm going to get in. I'm going to try and bring that process back on track. So I'm not neutral about the process, but I'm neutral about the outcome. That's not my place because mediation is self determination. I leave that to the parties and counsel. Now, that's one approach, an approach that's used a lot in, say, problem solving approaches, facilitation approaches. But you do a lot of community mediations as well, Tanu. You've been involved in a lot of big projects in terms of community mediations. Does this approach work in community mediations of saying I am outcome neutral, but I'm not process neutral?
I think mediation is a lot more than just the process that we are following,
Okay.
right? When you say process neutral, there is a process in place in your head, right?
Right.
And I assume it is the facilitative process because that's where most of us
Yeah.
come from, right? But actual mediation uh, is a lot more than facilitative, and especially when it comes to community mediation, even political mediation, even, I mean, every kind of mediation. There are so many processes that have to be used, and sometimes you have to go beyond the process because eventually you have to make the parties rethink about the approach that they're taking. If the
Yeah.
decision will be theirs, the outcome will be theirs, but they will not have a different outcome or a decision unless they rethink what they are doing,
Mm.
right? And for that, whatever necessary, I would, I think I would be open to that because at worst, what is it? At worst, uh, somebody will say, sorry, I don't trust you. I don't want you to be the mediator, which is fair. I think it's absolutely fair because get out of the process, get out of the mediation if somebody says they don't trust you or they don't want you as the mediator. But do everything that is possible to make them uncomfortable with what they are doing, because unless they rethink and unless they start questioning themselves, they will not stop being part of the problem. They will not start becoming part of the solution.
Right. And
So I'm not process like you said, I'm not process fanatic
mm,
at all. I do think you have to be alert and on your feet all the time, assessing a situation and then thinking of what you could use here to help the party go forward.
yeah.
I'm absolutely neutral about the outcome, no doubt about it, because, like I said right in the beginning, that was a hard lesson I learned, that
Mm,
what is right and wrong in my head is not right and wrong for the rest. So let them decide their outcome.
yeah. No, wonderful advice once again in terms of being genuine, and I think once again, I think it's a great place to wrap up, because you started off with that. You said that neutrality is not an act; it is about being genuine about who you are as a mediator, and you'll agree that people sometimes choose mediators based on how they relate to them. Relatability is quite a big factor in terms of appointing a mediator, and if you show who you are genuinely, this is my style, this is how I approach it, this is how I will be involved. So don't you should be happy with the way I get involved because I'm going to ask those tough questions, as you said, Tanu. I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable about your existing positions so that you can reflect on your true interests, right? And that's the role of the mediator. And if you don't appreciate that about my role, then you can go to someone else, I guess. But that's what you bring to the table. That's your understanding of neutrality. Because see, I think it's sometimes these principles of mediation kind of remind me of the scriptures. All of us have different scriptures depending on what religion we follow, and those scriptures apply to each person's mind differently. You will read the scripture, it will come to you one way, but someone in your same house might read the same scripture and it will come to them a whole different way. So we understand we understand what the principle is, but I guess we have to, I would say, personalize it and then kind of reflect it to the parties and then let them take the call. Would you agree with that?
I use a lot of scriptural gyan or philosophy when I am talking to parties, especially when there are harder conversations.
Yeah.
So, yes, of course, I agree that we have to go back to ancient philosophies. And of course, we have to philosophize, when it
Yeah.
comes to situations, because otherwise it's very difficult for anybody to look at himself or herself as an observer of the situation. That's what we want parties to do, right? We want parties to move out from where they are stuck, move out, see themselves, as an observer of when they were looking at the problem, what did they think? And for that, there has to be a larger picture. So, yes, I do agree. I do believe that each of us comes with our, understanding of whatever we've read as scriptures, as non scriptures, whatever philosophy. And we do tend to bring that, you know, into the conversation. And maybe, our neutrality and our training as mediator helps us even to become a good listener to what the other person is saying, so that our understanding itself expands and, we are able to have that conversation with him or her.
Fantastic. I've got copious notes here. It's almost lunchtime in India, so we're going to try and wrap this up now. We've got so many notes. We started talking about neutrality. We spoke about fairness. We touched upon a very delicate topic about coaching and guiding and mediation, and why mediators should be courageous and brave enough to do that, not be afraid. Of course, you need to do it the right way, and we spoke about that as well. But to be genuine, I think that's the message in terms of displaying your neutrality. Tanu Mehta, thank you so much for joining us on the Mission Mediation podcast. For those of you watching this live or watching this on record, please do continue to interact with us on LinkedIn or via mail. Do reach out to us, and we're happy to connect you with Tanu as well. And if you are struggling in a situation where uh, you think a mediator might help you resolve a dispute, I always say that mediation is just a facilitated negotiation. So if you're struggling with a situation, a conflict, and a mediator might help you resolve that. Tanu and myself will be more than happy to help. So please do reach out to us. Once again, Tanu, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the illustrious podcast list that I've seen you have. It's fantastic, the kind of people you've brought in, and I'm so happy to be in that so much again for having this conversation. It was a good morning with a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Tanu. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. See you. Bye.
Bye.